Hello everyone. One of the many openings faced by the beginners is the scholar's mate. But what beginner players tend to do is they get nervous and they get panic and they eventually lose the game. So I am here to show you how to effectively punish this opening. The main idea behind the scholar's mate is you're playing the black side, your opponent plays e4, you respond with 5. They bring this queen to h5, thinking okay, I'm bringing my queen to h5. My opponent is going to make some random knight move. Let's bring this bishop to c4 and align this with the f7 pawn. Such and if my opponent just plays something random, ignoring the threat, we can checkmate him. And if you do hit the queen or something, he will be like, wow, such an idiot. He just blundered the checkmate in 4 moves. So this is what happens if one is careless. So this is the idea behind the scholar's meet. Let me show you an effective way to punish this. First things first, you, your opponent plays e4, you respond with e5, and they bring their queen to h5. What you should not do is you should not attack this queen right away because this queen is right now attacking this e5 pawn. Let's say you develop your knight and attack the pawn or attack the queen. The queen can capture your pawn on e5 and you will be losing an important central pawn. You can block with the bishop and then you can castle, but it's it's a loss of a pawn, so that's not good. What you also should not do is you should not attack the queen with the pawn, because what happens now is your opponent captures your central pawn, delivers a check, and also attacks the rook, which is even more tragic. However you block with the bishop or you block with the knight, whatever you use to block, your opponent just captures the rook and he just captures the pawn, he gets away. You cannot trap his queen in this position. So you cannot also do this. So what you can do is, once your opponent plays e4, e5, queen to h5, according to the principle, you have to develop your knight. Okay, let's say if you develop this knight, you lose this pawn. So you develop this knight and you safeguard the central pawn. Your opponent plays bishop c4 and tries to checkmate you. Now you can play your queen to e7 and block this. But the disadvantage is your queen is blocking your own bishop's path. So that's not good. Or you can play queen f6 and god f7, but still that hinders the natural square of the g8 knight, because this knight loves to go to f6 but the queen is standing there, so that's also not good. So what you can do here instead is you can play g6. Now you attack the queen. Once the queen goes back to f3 and again threatens checkmate, this is what all the scholars mate players do. You play knight to f6 and block the queen's vision of the f7 pawn. Now, what they tend to do is, okay, this is the piece which is blocking the f7 from the queen. Okay, so what we can do, we should try to remove this knight. So, your opponent plays g4, g4 and tries to dismantle this knight from this position and checkmate you. What you do is, you play knight to d4. This is a move that you should remember. This is a key square in the scholar's mid position. You just jump to d4, you hit the queen, you also threaten the c2 pawn here, which will fork the king and the rook. Okay, so this is a very important move that you have to remember. So your opponent has to go back, sorry, your opponent has to go back to d1 so that he can defend the c2 pawn. Now you play this aggressive move d5. You may ask, what? You want me to play d5? Okay, my opponent takes the pawn. What do I do? Maybe I take this, my opponent takes, I take with the queen and hit the rook. Okay, that looks good. But no, we are not going to do that. The main purpose behind this move e5, d5 is we open up this light squared bishop. See, this pawn is blocking this bishop's view. So what we do is we open up this bishop, and once your opponent captures the pawn, you capture the pawn on g4 and hit the queen. Your opponent has two good moves, no, not good moves, two moves here to do. One is he can play knight to e2, block the attack on the queen, or he can play f3. He has these two moves. Let's say he blocks with knight to e2. It's mate in 2 right now. It's such a wonderful mate. You play knight to f3 check, king to f1, and you play bishop to h3, delivering this wonderful checkmate. See, the knight covers these two squares, and the bishop covers the square and delivers check. So this is a wonderful checkmate. So your opponent tries to checkmate you in 4 moves, but you checkmate them back in 9 moves. Interesting, right? So that is one option. Yeah. What your opponent can also do is he can play f3 and counter attack your bishop and block the attack on the queen. You also have to remember this move in this position. What you have to play is knight to e4. You may be like, what? I'm hanging these two pieces on my own? What is this ridiculous stuff? No, wait. Actually, if you look closer, he cannot capture this knight. Because if he does so, he loses the queen. So he cannot capture the knight. What else he can do? He can capture the bishop. But if he does so, you deliver a check and the king moves to f1 and you checkmate the king. So in this variation, you checkmate them in 10 moves. So yeah, this is what happens if they try to checkmate you in 4 moves. Okay, let's see some other variations. After this position, when you play knight to f6, your opponent can do one more thing. Your opponent can rotate this queen to the queen side and line this battery up to f7 pawn, because this is the weak pawn and it's not defended. It's only defended by the king. So he plays queen to b3. What you do now is you can play d5 and maybe he takes the pawn, then you jump to d5, or you can maybe go here with the knight to a5 and fork these two pieces, and once the queen moves you can capture this piece back, this bishop, and it will be okay. But the best move in this position is knight to d4. You may be asking, what should I allow this? I should I allow this capture by my opponent? And your opponent will be like, oh, such an idiot. Let's take this pawn with check. Now he has to move his king. His king will be stuck in the center. He cannot castle. So he does this to you. And now, if you look closer, it's white's move, and white's queen is under attack. This queen is under attack. This queen is also defending this bishop. So he has to move this queen somewhere, but he should stay in contact with this bishop, or else he will lose this bishop. So he cannot come to d5, he cannot come to e6. The only move, queen e4. This queen to c4 defends the bishop. What should we do now? We should deflect the piece which is defending this bishop. That is the queen. So what we can do? We can easily attack this queen by pushing this pawn to b5 and hitting the queen. And now this queen has to move somewhere, also defending this c2 pawn, because if it just randomly moves somewhere else, what you will do is you will play knight to c2 check and fork the king and the rook. Sorry about that arrow. Yeah. So that is also another trap behind that move. So maybe the queen can go to d3, or they can give you, once they give you the check, you just don't worry. You just move and capture this bishop. And right now, we are also threatening this royal fork, which will fork the king, queen, and the rook. So it will be even more tragic for them. Now they have to go back to c3 and defend this pawn. So this is also not a good variation for them. Now let's move on to the main line of the game. After e4, e5, queen h5, knight c6, and after bishop to c4, you block this checkmate and attack the queen. The queen goes back. You play knight to f6. There are two main lines for white in this position. One is, I already said that d4 is the key square, right? Because this is a key square which will hit the queen, threatens the c2 pawn. It exerts a lot of pressure on the white position. So white tries to restrict that access of us to the d4 square, because he plays either knight to e or c3 in this position, which will control the d4 square effectively. So let's say our opponent plays knight to e2. I want you to just develop bishop to g7. And now the idea for white is he wants to play d3, bring this bishop and pin this knight to your queen. Let's say he plays d3. You just castle. He brings his bishop, pins this knight to the queen. Now you attack this bishop. If he captures, it's fine for us. But he will be like, okay, I just want to keep this tension over there. I just want to keep pinning this knight to the queen. What you do is you just block this bishop and make it go back. You may say, no, isn't g5 a weakening move because it weakens a lot of squares near the king side? No, trust me, they're playing some dubious line, okay? So it's not a weakening move for us. They have to go back to g3, and once they do it, you play this move d5. Now you can see all these common patterns, like we play d5 to get this bishop out. Once they capture the pawn on d5, you play bishop to g4 and hit this queen. Once the queen moves, don't capture this. Don't capture this pawn. It's okay, but he will capture, then you have to capture. This is fine, but not the best. Not the best for black. You play knight to d4. This is a move you have to remember. We hit this c2 pawn and threaten a fork. So what white will do is, okay, this knight is such a strong piece. Let me eliminate this. And he will capture our knight. You recapture, and once the queen captures, you bring your rook, deliver this check, and white has only two options. Let's say white plays king to d2. He can also go to king to f1. Let's say he went to king to d2. Feel free to pause the video and win the game for black. I hope you found the answer. Congratulations if you found the answer. The winning move is, this bishop is looking at the queen. It has vision to the queen. So what we do is, but this knight is blocking in between. So we move this knight, we deliver a check, and we attack the queen. This is known as the discovered attack. We deliver a discovered attack on this queen. So if he captures with the pawn, you just capture the queen and you threaten this pawn. Or if he captures with the queen, the knight, you recapture the queen with the rook, and once they take our rook, you capture on b2, and that rook is a toast in the corner. So yeah, this is what you can do for this knight to e2 line. Or say your opponent goes to f1 with their king. Let's say they play king f1. I want you to deliver this check from the bishop, which will further force the king back, and deliver this discovered attack on the queen, which will force the queen to leave from this diagonal, and we can capture this rook easily. Let's say the queen moves to c5. The queen can only go to c5 because the queen cannot go anywhere along this fourth rank. It cannot go to e4 because our rook hits, cannot go there because it's protected, it cannot go there also, cannot also go there. So it cannot go anywhere. The only safe square for the queen is c5. Once the queen goes to c5, we just go capture the pawn on p2 and win the rook. That's the power of this g7 bishop, because it just sees the whole diagonal. And finally, this is this is going to be something that your opponent can do at their best. Okay, this is about the knight e2 line, and this is something your opponent can do well and still survive without being completely lost, as we saw in the previous variations. After this knight to e2 move, you play bishop to g7. And before I show you this line, if you found this video helpful, please do consider to subscribe the channel, because it will motivate me to make further videos which will empower a lot of chess players who are in the need to learn chess. So yeah, let's say the opponent castles after you bring your bishop to g7. You also castle. They play this d3 move to bring their bishop out, but we play d5. And once they capture the pawn, we do the same thing. We do bishop to g4 and we attack. So you are getting used to these common motifs in this scholars mate, right? We play d5 to get our bishop to g4 and attack the queen. We jump in with our knight to d4 to threaten the c2 pawn and trap the rook in the corner. So these are common ideas that you can remember easily. Let's say the queen goes to e3. Now you capture this d5 pawn and you capture the bishop. And if you look at this position, black is doing comfortably well. This is something that white can get away with, but still, white is not better. Black is comfortably better, as you can see from the eval bar. Eval bar, it's minus 1.14, because all of our pieces are well developed and it's all superior when compared to the inferior knight on e2. And these three pieces, what they are doing, but they are there, and we have more space and we control more space in the board. So black is doing comfortable here. Okay, we saw knight e2 main line. The other main line is the c3 e5, and after queen h5, knight c6, bishop c4, queen f3, knight f6. Instead of knight to e2, what they can do is they can play c3. Okay, from this move what we should try to understand is, we don't have certain squares as we had in the previous variation of knight e2 or the g4 attack or something else, because this c3 pawn controls our knight's movement. These two squares are not available for our knight. So this we must consider and register in our brains. So we just develop bishop to g7, and after d3 we castle. The d3 is the same idea. They just try to bring their bishop out to g5 and they try to pin you. You attack the bishop. Once the bishop goes back, you play g5 and further attack. Generally, it's a weakening move, but it's not a weakening move in this case. They go back to g3, you play d5, same aggressive move, they capture you. You play bishop to g4, hit this queen, and once the queen moves, you play knight takes d5, hitting the queen. And once they recapture, you capture with the queen. So take a moment to contemplate this position, and what white will try to do in this position. Maybe white's king is stuck in the center. So the natural move for white is to develop the knight to f3 and castle the king to safety. Let's say he tries to play knight f3. You play this aggressive move f5. The idea behind this move is you want to go f4 and trap this bishop and this queen. Fork this bishop and this queen. Sorry. So what your opponent will do is, okay, this bishop is stuck. It cannot go there because there's a pawn. It cannot come forward. It cannot do anything. So maybe I move this h2 pawn and create a left for my bishop. So what they try to do is they try to play h3, hit your bishop. At the same time, they can hide their own bishop in the next move. What you do in this position is you don't care the attack on your bishop and you just go f4. You attack the queen and the bishop. This is something the danger level. See, they're attacking a piece which is worth 3 points of material. But what you are doing instead, you are playing f4 and attacking this vulnerable queen which is worth 9 points of material. So they should respond to this attack first. So that's how you can do. Don't be feeble and okay, this is attack, let me go back. No, don't do it. You just be aggressive and punish your opponent effectively in this position. So you just go f4, hit this queen. Let's say the queen goes back to e2. Now, before capturing this bishop, your own bishop is under attack. So what you do, you capture this knight, again hit this queen with your bishop. So he can either capture with this pawn, but maybe his pawn structure get doubled and he will lose his bishop eventually. He may go capture with the queen and he will be like, okay, I capture with the queen. Let's say he gets so greedy and captures my bishop. We can capture his queen with check. Now he will be losing his queen. No. So what you do is, our queen is undefended in this position. So before capturing this bishop, you just capture this queen on f3. And once they recapture, then you capture the bishop. And once they capture your pawn, you capture this pawn with your rook. And I mean, look at this position. This is minus 7.34. This is the best I can give you for Scholar's Mate, and just go and crush your opponents if they play Scholar's Mate against you. And do consider subscribing to the channel, and thank you so much.